Thanks for tuning in to Inside Ourlads NFL Depth Charts on the Ourlads Football Network as we update the latest in NFL free agency with Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post. Ryan, good talking to you again.
What's up? How are you? I can see you.
Yeah, it's nice, right? I forgot about that. This is
Yeah.
the first time you can see me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that should be normal. I know everybody's going, well, why can't you see him? So we won't get into
Yeah.
it, but anyway, fact is, it's a great time of year. Free agency's underway. It's been a couple of weeks, and most of the good stuff is in the books. But Deshaun Watson is still taking up all the headlines, and we're not surprised by that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negative headlines for Deshaun Watson. This is starting to look like Deshaun Watson is not going to get traded before the draft, and if anything, that doesn't mean he won't get traded this year. It just doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's two very different parts to the story that are obviously interconnected, right? Like from a football standpoint, Greg, the Texans don't want to trade him, and he wants to be traded, and there's a heavy market for him. And then for the legal part of this story, he's up to 13 different women of mistreatment, misconduct, sexual assault, um, all in the state of Texas, um, which all the way up to allegedly, according to the defendant's lawyers, forcing one woman to commit oral sex on him. So that is very serious allegations. We have seen these kind of allegations where they are true. We have seen them where they are fabricated. We don't know at all right now which is which. Watson's side is obviously saying he's innocent. The stories all seem very similar from the 13 women that I've read and heard from the lawyer when he had a press conference. So I'm not here to be judge, jury. I'm just telling you it's a lot out there, and I certainly think while the women on are the that from a football angle, it certainly hurts his trade market because it would be very hard for a team to trade for him, not knowing if he is going
Yeah.
to be found guilty of these allegations, suspended, face legal. He could go to jail if if they decide to press criminal charges. But it is worth noting that right now these are all civil charges, which is lawsuits. He does not face any criminal police charges.
Just so you know, your bandwidth is acting up. You might want to drop some of your browsers over there.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the timing is the biggest thing, isn't it? It's because here's a guy that I'm not from Houston, but everything you hear from outside of Houston regarding Deshaun Watson is what a great, not just player and teammate he is, but how great he is in the community. I mean, this guy is well loved in the community. And now all of a sudden, just when Deshaun Watson is talking about threatening to leave, this comes out. The timing, I'm sorry, it's just not. It's too. The coincidences is just. I'm not saying the what they're saying isn't true. Again, I'm just saying the obvious. It's just too coincidental.
It's very coincidental, yes. But you can be a great, community ambassador.
Yep.
You can be very charitable with your money, and you can mistreat women.
Yep.
I'm not saying he did. I don't know. But those are not mutually exclusive things. I know very charitable people who, are also, pigs.
Evil. Yeah.
Pigs.
Yeah.
So those are not,
I mean, Bundy was a really good political, and the people really liked him. So
you can certainly live your personal life a different way than you live your public life.
Yep.
Doesn't mean he is, doesn't mean he did. But these are all very similar stories, and the allegations. You and I don't have enough time here to go over them all. Obviously they're horrifying. If they're true. Situation on their hands, complicated situation than they did when it was just so. Where Watson plays, I think I've said on this show before, I didn't think there was any chance he'd play for Houston again. I thought he'd get traded to probably Miami. I don't know that Miami can touch him right
Yeah.
now. Not to say he's guilty before proven innocent, but he's toxic right now.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to be so 100% positive that everything's going to be okay, which just isn't going to happen. He's going to be in Houston. As far as this draft is concerned, it's going to be a surprise if he gets traded now before the draft. And that means that there are going to be those other teams. Now, again, if his name gets cleared up after the draft, the Denvers, the Carolinas, and so forth down the line, the Patriots. There's going to be a bunch of teams that come into play now that probably wouldn't have had a shot going up against the Jets and the Patriots and the Dolphins.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
The market widens. It's not, again, from a football standpoint, it's not good for the Texans. The Texans needed to trade him before the draft so they could assure themselves of the number 2 or number 3 pick. Look at what the Seahawks were getting offered from the Bears. A boatload, reportedly, but all the picks were going to be in the 20s. Well, they don't want picks in the 20s. You don't want picks in the 20s for Deshaun Watson. You want a chance to get, Zach Wilson, not a chance to take a stretch on Jordan Love. So, it's certainly look, and that's what's going to dominate the NFL news cycle from now until that's the new Dak Prescott contract.
Yeah, and also what it does, well, Dolphins, even though they lost Fitzpatrick, they go out and they sign Brissett. So that really doesn't change a whole lot with Watson, but it kind of does. Let's just say that the Dolphins are going to move on. The Jets are going to move on. So even just talking about, say, the Jets situation of the Dolphins, well, Dolphins have Tua. There's no reason to believe that they're not happy with him. Brissett's going to be the number 2. With the Jets, it's now basically Darnold, or are they trading the pick? And are they drafting Zach Wilson? I don't think they're going to go after another quarterback if they go after a quarterback, but that's pretty much it. It's no more Deshaun Watson, no more trading Quinnen Williams. So this is it, and I'm not sure that we're going to find out for a little while. We still have another month to go.
Well, did you hear, Mr. Jets fan Greg? Did you hear Corey Davis today?
Yeah, I don't know whether now. I don't usually take a whole lot though what players say, because players usually don't really know everything. But I mean, is there anything that led you to believe that what Corey Davis said was any different from what other players say about personnel decisions?
I mean, Corey Davis made it sound like he was told that.
That was a reason to come because he was going to have a veteran and not a rookie.
Correct. That's what Corey Davis made it seem like. Could he be misinformed? Yeah. Could he have misunderstood? Yeah. Could they have lied to him? Yeah. But Corey Davis didn't make it seem like, oh yeah, I'm going to play with whoever's here, and right now is the guy who's here is Sam. Yeah. He made it sound like he asked during the free agent process, and it was indicated that Sam was their guy. You're right. That's players. Things change. That was the plan on May 23rd. March 3rd. On April 22nd, sorry, things go out and play. But certainly seemed like he got the indication when he asked that Sam's the guy, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And credit to him for asking.
Sure. Look, I still think that
you don't realize how many players don't ask the right questions during free agency. It's just like, okay, you're going to give me that much money? All right, I'm there.
Yeah.
So
that is good. Anyway, I still do think that my guess is that's the direction that they're going to go anyway, just by a little bit. I just think it makes too much sense because now that the way that they're building the team, again, you just give him one more year. You wind up being able to use that pick now where a team can come from anywhere to number 2 because they want Zach Wilson. Now you wind up getting more draft capital. I just think it makes too much sense unless the Jets absolutely are 99% sure Zach Wilson is going to be a great one that you have to trade that pick and take advantage of it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade too far down. What's the lowest you trade down to?
Probably Carolina at 7, maybe. I'd probably say, because that's a reasonable team there.
I agree. That's where I would go. I think it's eighth, Carolina.
Oh,
But
eight
yeah,
Carolina. Okay.
that's the lowest I would go. I agree.
Okay. Yeah, because Denver's also there at 9. They need a quarterback. So
Yeah. I mean, I guess I guess what I'm saying is I
go out
wouldn't
of the
go out
top
of
10.
10. I wouldn't go out of the
Yeah.
top. No, I would not go out of the top.
And I think Carolina makes the most sense because they're so desperate. I mean, Tepper is so desperate to make some sort of a move that I think the Jets will have him in a good spot. So we'll see.
But is the splashy move, if you're Tepper, is the splashy move, hey, we got Zach Wilson? Like, is that?
I know he wants Watson.
I mean,
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, or Wilson.
I know he wants Deshaun Watson, the sure thing, but if that ain't going to happen, then
no, I meant Russell Wilson. Yeah, he wants one of those guys.
And I don't think Russell Wilson, especially now that it looks like Russell Wilson's getting everything he was asking for, because Seattle is making moves.
Has he gotten alignment?
What's that?
Has he gotten alignment?
Yeah, they made a deal just recently. Let's see, what was the deal they made? Seattle. Let's see what Seattle added, because I know at the last week or two they've added a few players. They added Gabe Jackson in the trade with the Raiders.
Okay.
And
okay.
Yeah, and they made sure to re-sign Carson. Now he also, of course, he's talked about he wants them to sign what's his name?
Antonio Brown.
If you're Seattle, do you do that if Russell Wilson wants him?
I guess he showed he had something left in Tampa. He didn't ruin their locker room. Yeah. If you believe in your locker room, I guess you could look. Tampa signed Josh Gordon. Seattle signed Josh Gordon.
Right. That's true.
Right. That's a much bigger wild card than Antonio Brown. So if you're willing to take the Josh Gordon flyer, Antonio Brown's not getting $20 million a year like old Antonio Brown. You could probably. I probably would take that risk. If Russell really wants him, I'd probably throw him that bone.
All right, let's go through the divisions, and in the next once we get into April, we're gonna have a couple of longer, more in-depth shows where we're gonna go through every team. We're gonna talk about their free agency. We're gonna preview their draft. So that's coming up in April. We're gonna use this time just to basically talk about some of the top stories going on within each division. Mitch Trubisky to the Bills. That was a smart signing for Buffalo. And I guess I don't know what it does to Trubisky if Allen doesn't get hurt.
I think it just gives him a year to cool, like a Marcus Mariota year. A year to almost get away from, being toxic for, a very obviously different reason than I used the word last time. But a year to get away so you're not fresh in everybody's mind as like a stinky quarterback who underachieved.
Yeah.
Go to Buffalo, work hard, let the narrative change to here's a guy who's taking his second chance very seriously and, still has a lot of potential and he's really mastered their offense. Let the narrative change to that for a year and then go back into the market.
All right, we talked about Miami. They get Brissett. They also add Malcolm Brown to the backfield. Will Fuller as far as a wide receiver. And they made a trade with Houston for McKinney at linebacker, and they also signed Scarlett, who played with the Texans as well, and then just recently signed slot corner Justin Coleman. They got a lot of DBs in Miami. That's the type of defense that they like to run there in Miami. It's that New England Patriot way. But Fuller, injury prone, but when he's healthy, he's a difference maker. And Malcolm Brown, so... they didn't have to spend a whole lot. They got a couple of decent upgrades.
Yeah, their big splash was last offseason.
Yep.
And maybe Watson.
Meanwhile, the New England Patriots, the Cam Newton signing. What do you think? Is that just okay? Worst case scenario, we got Cam back, but we're going after one of these quarterbacks at the draft.
Yeah, that's how I read their whole offseason. They operated like a team that knows they're paying their backup quarterback $5 million, not the incentive-laden $14 million that he, signed for, and they're going to have a rookie quarterback on a cap-friendly contract. So they spent $1 zillion on free agency to upgrade the team for that rookie quarterback. That's how I read their offseason.
Yeah, we may need a whole show to talk about the Patriots. I'll have Evan Lazar on, who covers the Patriots for CLNS Media. We did a Patriot show all season, so I'm definitely going to have Evan on in the next couple of weeks. But Aguilar, Bourne, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, they needed receivers. They have receivers. The tight ends is really where, I mean, Aguilar is overrated. He's not good. He doesn't scare me. He still drops too many passes. Bourne is a decent, cheap option. But Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith on the same team is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, the obvious parallel is when they had Gronk and Aaron Hernandez at the same time. Josh McDaniels can just go dust off. He's the master of changing the offense based on the personnel, and he could just go dust off his 2010 playbook, and ideally that would work the same.
Offensively, they lost Tooney, but remember we talked about that they were going to be able to take the kid from Michigan and slide him inside, and that's obviously what they're going to do because they acquired Trent Brown from the Raiders to play tackle, so they're back to being set on the offensive line. On defense, Judon was the big deal. He's a good player. I think he's probably overpriced, but aren't they all? And then they bring back Kyle Van Noy and add a few other players.
Yeah, and they get all their COVID guys back.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick Chung retired, actually, I think. But
Hightower will be back? Okay.
Yeah. So, they're a much improved defense. Trying to think who else they added on defense.
Henry Anderson.
Yeah. Yeah, they added depth and starting players. I mean, they're good. They're good. They're right now they'd be in the playoffs again in my mind.
I thought the Jets have done a good job so far. I like the fact that they have signed a lot of young players that are, they hope, ready to take that next step now, whether it's Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, Carl Lawson, Sheldon Rankins, Jared Davis, and then they added a veteran, LaMarcus Joyner, to the secondary, which I like. And so, yeah, I tagged DeMarcus May. I mean, if you're a Jet fan, you should be pleased.
Absolutely. Look, we've been through this song and dance with the Jets before, Greg, in free agency, right? Like Tremaine Jackson, and I could go on and on down the list, right? Even C.J. Mosley's been a disappointment. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so we've been through Le'Veon Bell. We've been through this dance. What I think is a little different this time is the Jets didn't overpay the top guy. They didn't get Galladay. They got Corey Davis. They didn't get Judon. They got Carl Lawson. So I think they got young players they hope are ascending, and if they are ascending, they gave out good contracts, and if they were a flash in the pans, they gave out bad contracts.
Yep. Also, you mentioned Mosley, so I have to ask you this question. It is plain to see now for absolutely sure the Jets will be running a 4-3 defense. C.J. Mosley has only played in a 3-4. Do you believe in the trade rumors?
Yes, I believe in the trade rumors. I don't believe they'll dump him for a 7th round pick.
So do I. Yeah.
But if they can get something legitimate for him, yeah, I do. Yep.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because. But look, any good player, really good player, should be able to play in any system. But it's just a point that people need to keep an eye on. Okay, in the AFC North, Baltimore, they took advantage of the Giants and signed Zeitler. So they're, but Brown, the right tackle, that's Orlando Brown. That's going to be the big deal, is because apparently they're going to trade him. So that's still on the table. So that could be one of the last big deals we hear about. Otherwise, they re-signed most of their own players.
Yep. And they did they get a receiver? Not yet. They didn't get. No, that's what's missing from them. Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
Bengals were able to, was strange. They let Lawson go, and I think in a cheaper deal, right? They spent more to get Hendrickson, correct?
Yeah. But Hendrickson's been more productive, though. That's the deal. I mean, look, he played with better players, right? He had Cam Jordan taking attention away from him with the Saints. Lawson was kind of a one-man band. But, they got Hendrickson. I want to say it was maybe What was that contract? 3 years, 48 million, something like
The
that.
Hendrickson deal was
Yeah.
4 years and 60.
Yeah, so that's a big contract for a guy who had one good year, but no, they lost their top. They lost their corner, William Jackson. Right? It's been kind of they're an interesting free agent team because they made a bunch of like lateral moves. They've swapped out players, but I don't know that they've got much better players.
All right, Pittsburgh. Juju Smith comes back on a 1-year, $8 million deal. That's like the big story out of Pittsburgh. Look, this is what happens when, you know, and today these teams, these GMs are apparently getting a little smarter. You know, they don't want to deal with these prima donnas, and Juju Smith acts like a prima donna.
You know what, I really think it came down to the wide receiver market, Greg. I talked to a lot of people around the NFL just as free agency was starting the first day, and they were like, and they were right. They said these wide receivers, you're going to see the same thing happen this year that happened to Robbie Anderson last year. The wide receiver market, you're going to see it again next year. People don't want to pay wide receivers, with one or two exceptions. They don't want to pay wide receivers. Schuster has a little bit of a me first persona, so that held him back. So he goes back to Pittsburgh, where they don't really need him. I mean, honestly, they have Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. They don't really need him. He's lucky they took him back. But yeah, I was surprised. I think he's a really good football player. I'm surprised he had to take a 1-year, $8 million deal. But basically, the NFL is saying, I could give a big contract to $8 million a year to a 50-year receiver, or I could go draft, a rookie, not even Justin Jefferson or Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs in the first round. Look at all the second-round receivers. I could get A.J. Brown or Deebo Samuel or DK Metcalf.
Yep.
So the wealth of second-round receivers that are making a huge impact in the last 3 years are hurting the free agents. So I wonder if in 2 years, the DK Metcalfs of the world are going to see that the next DK Metcalf is now hurting DK Metcalf. It might become running back, really, where it's a 4 or 5 year position where you can, and then after that, if you're not one of the top guys, you kind of get recycled.
Okay, in the South, the Colts, we talked about the Wentz deal. Marlon Mack is back. Xavier Rhodes is back. So that's good because he rejuvenated his career there. The Jags, what do you think about the Jags? They tagged Cam Robinson, and just taking a look at the new players. Now, Marvin, what's that?
They upgraded their secondary. That was their focus, right? They got
Shaq Griffin, yep.
And a safety.
Rashawn Jenkins,
Yeah. That was their focus. I think what that told you was people thought the Jaguars had all this money. They have Urban Meyer. They were going to go on a shopping spree. I think it told you two things. One, it's still not a place people want to go play, even with Urban Meyer. So they're still going to have to overpay guys right now. And two, they weren't really willing to do that, to overpay guys. They're going to do that in a year or two once Trevor Lawrence is settled.
And that was smart. Yeah.
They're not going to pay you now, and then you're in the third year of your deal when they're actually ready to compete for the AFC.
All right, now what about Tennessee? So they signed Dupree. They give him a lot of money. They also gave Janoris Jenkins some cash in the secondary. They lose Adoree Jackson, who went to the Giants. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Bud Dupree, then they lose Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. Is that a good trade-off?
No, I think their offense got worse and their defense got better, right? I mean, that's essentially what they did. Look, Bud Dupree can't really be worse. Even coming off an injury, he can't really be less effective than Jadeveon Clowney was last year. So I think they're probably about the same. I think their offense got worse, their defense got better, and their defense needed to get better because their defense was costing them some games.
Okay, in the AFC West, the Broncos, they bring in Darby and Fuller to the secondary. They re-signed Kareem Jackson. They signed long-term Justin Simmons. So they've got I tell you what, the Denver Broncos, and they also re-signed Shelby Harris, they're going to have a really good defense this year.
Yeah. Can they score?
That's the question, is that's the team that's going to have to make a decision. You bring Peyton in. he's a guy that's going to want to draft. He's not going to want to trade picks, but maybe you have to move up and get your quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, the Drew Lock. I feel like Drew Lock hasn't really been given a fair shot. But I think that's just kind of the way it is now. You don't get 3 years really if you're not showing much. So I'd like to see Drew Lock this year, but if Drew Lock doesn't perform this year, then Fangio and Shermer and Shula, all those guys are going to be out. So it's kind of a tough situation. That's the new NFL, right? Every timeline's been sped up. So yeah, I don't know if they're going to be able to. If he moves up to get a quarterback, well then you're in that situation where that quarterback's probably going to have to learn a new offense next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they sort of like the Jets. Do they give Locke another year, keep building up the rest of the team? It might be the smart way to go, unless they're infatuated with one of these, quarterbacks. Raiders. Now, I was kind of surprised that they went after Drake. That gives them a really good backfield. Don't get me wrong. Okay. Meanwhile, Ngakoue was their big signing.
Yeah, good player, good pass rusher. I think he's never had less than 8 sacks in a season. Questions about how good he is against the run.
Chargers, meanwhile, not a lot of good things happening with the Chargers this offseason so far. It just seems like the rebuilding process is going to take a little while.
Yeah, which is a shame because you really wanted to see them, put Justin Herbert in a good position this year to try to take off, and it seems like they're actually getting worse.
The top move was to sign Corey Linsley, which is a good one, to give your quarterback a steady center. Nothing wrong with that. But no skill position players. They lose Henry. Jared Cook basically replaces him. All right. Yeah. Prescott signed the big contract, so he's not going anywhere, it looks like. Other than that, Keanu Neal, and not much else. So kind of quiet for the Cowboys.
Yeah, once Dak Prescott got that deal, you knew they were just kind of trying to run it back. They believe they have the most talented team in the NFC East. They just need everybody to be together.
Looked like the Giants had a very productive offseason so far with the Galladay signing, with locking up Leonard Williams long-term. They bring in Ragland. They bring in Jackson, who really just didn't have a lot of time on the field last year because of injury. Kyle Rudolph will help the tight end game with Evan Ingram. Maybe that'll make Ingram a little bit more dangerous unless they still plan on trading him, which we talked about last time out. They spent a lot of money, something the Giants don't often do, but what do you think about their free agent moves?
Interesting. They went into free agency with $1 million, and then they gave out $120 million of guaranteed money. So good cap gymnastics by the Giants. Kick some problems down the road. Look, they've spent a lot on free agents the last 3 out of 5 years or so. They're trying. They say they want to build it with the draft, but they keep going. I mean, 6 of their 10 best players were either drafted, were either free agents or trades. So they've really rebuilt it, the quick way, because they're pretty desperate to get back to a winning team. I like what they've done. I think they've really improved the team, but the offensive line is a major question mark. I mean, it was 31st ranked last year. It's been towards the bottom for 7 years. I don't see it being much better, and that could blow the whole thing up.
And that's, you would think, the direction that they're going to take for the draft at this point. So, got to be.
It's that or pass rusher.
All right, Washington. Ryan Fitzpatrick looks like he's their, I don't know, he's their quarterback for a year. I don't know what that's about. Curtis Samuel, he had a breakout year last year. They needed playmakers, so that helps. And William Jackson, that could be an interesting signing. He's a talented corner, but their defense was not the problem. It's the offense. So at least they get Samuel, Lamar Miller. But again, who's their quarterback going to be long-term? Is it going to be Heineke? Are they really going to give Heineke a chance to win the starting job?
No. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick this year. Worry about it next year. I think Washington thought it had a big rebuild on its hands when they hired Ron Rivera, and then they realized how bad the NFC East is. They won it last year, and they're kind of in no man's land where they're like, if we go full-scale rebuild, we're missing a chance to make the playoffs. So they're kind of caught in that no man's land of, being a 9-win team. and just patching it together. And that's what Fitzpatrick is. He'll give you 7 to 9 wins. So I think that's what they're going for, thinking that could get them in the playoffs again. And I'd be really interested to see what their offense does with Antonio Gibson and Curtis Samuel. The right offensive coordinator could have a lot of fun with those two guys.
The Bears in the NFC North, so sort of like Washington, is Andy Dalton going to be their quarterback? Because this is another team we were just talking about before. What other teams need the quarterbacks? They've been trying to go after Russell Wilson. That's just not going to work, I think. So they're going to have to decide, well, we got to go in the draft, and maybe the Bears come into play. Everybody's very surprised Allen Robinson is still in Chicago. You just talked about the market for wide receivers. But Allen Robinson, I thought he might have been the best of the lot. I'm kind of surprised that he's still in Chicago. I just am.
Well, he got franchise tag.
Franchise tag, yep.
Yeah, so he got franchise tag, didn't have a choice. Then they put a little pressure on him by bringing Kenny Galladay in for a visit and saying, if you don't want our money, Galladay will take it, and we'll untag you, and you can go get $13 million on the free agency market. So they played a little bit of hardball with him there. That isn't going to win them any good juju back with Robinson.
You think they'll trade him?
No.
They could still trade him.
They could. I don't know that anybody's going to want to, they're not going to trade for him on the franchise tag of $18 million or whatever it is. No one's going to put that on their cap this year. So then you got to rework a deal with him, and reworking a deal, he's not going to like where the receiver market price is right now. So I don't know. I don't look. Pace and Nagy are on the hot seat. I don't see them giving up Allen Robinson for draft picks right now. I just don't. They need to win right now.
Yeah, it's got to be just a hope that they can work out a deal with one of these superstar quarterbacks, but it just doesn't look good.
Look, Andy Dalton. People poo-poo Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's good enough to start. Andy Dalton's been to 3 Pro Bowls. He's been to the playoffs 4 times. He's not going to win you a Super Bowl, but he is a good win the NFC North. Well, not win the NFC North because of the Packers, but you could get a playoff spot. You could win a wild card with Andy Dalton.
Yeah, he's better than Trubisky.
Yeah, you could do a lot worse. He's better than Nick Foles. He's better than 5 or 6, maybe 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. He shouldn't have been a backup last year. He's better than Cam Newton. So you could do better. They could easily be a 9-10 win team with Andy Dalton.
All right, Detroit. So Stafford's out. Goff is in. Goff's going to give him a year at least. So I don't think there's any doubt about that. Detroit's not going to be looking for a quarterback in this draft. Jamal Williams, I like the move. You pair him up with Swift, so I think that was smart. Perryman and Williams replaced Jones and Galladay, so that's a drop-off. Not much else. Brockers comes in. They re-sign Aquara. It's going to be a long rebuild for Detroit, but again, I think we talked about this before. I think they're headed in the right direction with the staff Campbell's put together and also some of the personnel guys that they have with the team right now.
Yeah, but like you said, that's a long rebuild, I think, which Goff doesn't really fit, but is what it is.
Aaron Jones re-signed. How surprised were you that he came back?
Very. I thought he was going to the Dolphins. Yeah. Very surprised that he. I think that was a case of how many times can we push Aaron Rodgers' buttons? We're not going to. We haven't given him a receiver. We just took away his center. Let's just give him his running back.
Yeah. And then they re-signed Kevin King.
Oh,
he's back.
He's the guy who gave up all the big plays in the NFC Championship game, right?
He's the guy that had the holding call at the end of the game and gave up all the big plays.
Yeah.
Fans really like that re-signing. Meanwhile, Minnesota, the big deal is the 2 big deals. The Giants took advantage of the Giants and signed Dalvin Tomlinson. Also brought in Patrick Peterson. It was all about the defense last year. It had to be the worst defense that this current coaching staff at Minnesota's had to field. So they had to go defense.
Yeah, Dalvin Tomlinson's an excellent run stuffer. Watched him every day for 3 years. Not much of a pass pressure guy, but the Vikings couldn't stop the run, so they got the best run stopper out there, whether free agency or the draft.
Carolina, they tagged Moton, and the big surprise, what a shock, that Matt Rule was reunited with Hassan Reddick. No one would have saw that coming.
No. Yeah. College coaches do that all the
Yep.
time. It's not just Matt Rule. They always dig into their. When Greg Schiano was in Tampa, he had tons of Rutgers guys on his team. They do that. They fill out their depth chart with guys they know.
Did you have to say Rutgers right now? I'm still feeling it. Okay.
So,
The Saints, it looks like it's Jameis Winston and Hill. It'll be the Winston-Hill combo. Who do you think is going to be the starting quarterback?
Winston Hill, didn't he play in the NFL for a long time?
Winston Hill played for the Jets. Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yes, he did.
Winston Hill. No, I mean, obviously, look, Jameis Winston is the more proven, established quarterback, but I think if you think he's going to get handed the job, then you don't realize how much Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill.
And by the way, if people really don't follow college football, you have YouTube. Just type in Taysom Hill and BYU, and just check it out. Because when he was playing that year for BYU, I actually thought he was a Heisman candidate. That's how good he played. So it was just injuries. Injuries derailed his career as a passer. It's a great story. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. Buccaneers.
I expect them to take a pretty big step back though this year. I mean, we're used to the Saints as one of the top 4 teams in the NFC.
That's
I don't
true.
see it.
Yep. Buccaneers, they were able to re-sign Levante David, Shaq Barrett, and also they gave the tag to Chris Godwin.
They brought the whole band back.
Yeah.
Talk about cap gymnastics. They gave Tom Brady $40 million in cash this year, and it counts $9 million against the cap. So some serious cap gymnastics. This is a team, they'll probably be the Saints in 2 or 3 years where they have to cut a bunch of guys and their window has closed, but they're going for back-to-back.
Arizona made a couple of splash signings with A.J. Green at wide receiver and J.J. Watt. They also made the deal with the Raiders for center Rodney Hudson. So how about that? A.J. Green and Larry Fitzgerald are going to be. Is Fitzgerald coming back too? Are they going to be playing together?
Seems like it. And oh, by the way, they have another guy, DeAndre Hopkins, I think is his name.
Yeah.
DeAndre. Oh, yeah. The best receiver in the NFL. So, yeah, that's look, those other 2 guys, they're older guys, obviously super accomplished, but that is a really interesting, 2020 meets 2010 offense.
The Rams, they get Stafford. We know it's all about Matthew Stafford. They also signed Leonard Floyd. It'll be interesting to see if Floyd can play well without his defensive coordinator, who's gone to the Chargers. But it's all about Matthew Stafford for the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about winning a Super Bowl. I thought Floyd would go. Actually, I thought he would go to the Chargers. I think most people did. I think probably the Chargers did. Thought Floyd would go to the Chargers. He's back. Interesting. Obviously, it's Super Bowl or bust there.
Trent Williams, how does a guy that's going to be, 33, sign a 6-year contract? I'd like to see what really counts in that deal. But
yeah. Part of it is tackles are playing later. You know, look at Andrew Whitworth in the NFC West. I think he's 39 or something, and he's still playing at a pretty high level. He signed a 3. I mean, tackles are playing later.
Maybe he can play 3 or 4 years.
There's other examples of guys, tackles playing to their late 30s now. So
also Alex Mack. So that really solidifies their offensive line a lot better, and they signed some of their own players. And interesting that 4 of the guys that they re-signed, or 3 of them, could have been targeted by Robert Saleh because they're all in the defensive backfield. But the Niners, looks like Richard Sherman may be the one guy left that could be a New York Jet still. And Seattle, meanwhile, we talked about Gabe Jackson. They re-signed Chris Carson, and that was about it. Still no other big splashes for Seattle. They took Witherspoon away from San Francisco, but San Francisco didn't want him anymore anyway.
Nope.
All right. So, before we go, the TV broadcast deal. So it's a big, weird, kind of complex, multi-streaming monstrosity. I don't understand it. All I know is it's going to take effect in a couple of years. Maybe, with the way things are going in the world, not even sure will be alive. But fact is, I'm not sure it's a good thing for the fans. These kind of business deals aren't usually good for fans.
The preeminent person in this world is a colleague, a friend of mine. If this kind of thing interests you, I suggest you read the New York Post. Andrew Marchand is the absolute best when it comes to this. Breaks all the news. He, where broadcasters are going, where networks are going, the next phase. I'm reading his story on the Post right now. Basically, most of the deal doesn't start till 2023, so it's nothing you got to worry about right now, except for Thursday Night Football is on Amazon Prime beginning 2022. So not this year, but the year after, people like me who don't have Amazon Prime won't be able to watch Thursday Night Football. It won't be one of those things where you can have a cheat. It sounds like it'll be Thursday Night Football or bust. They paid at least $1 billion, according to Martian. At least $1 billion for 15 football games. So that is crazy.
Maybe I should apply for a job at Amazon Prime now.
Yeah, and still working out a deal for the Sunday ticket, which I think that affects fans for sure. I know, people still love the Sunday ticket, so they're still in the works to finalize that for the next TV deal. What does it mean otherwise for the fans? It means that owners are going to get very rich. Salary cap is going to go way up. Player deals are going to go way up. And so feasibly, your team would be able to spend players.
All right. Well, maybe by 2022, you'll see Inside Ourlads NFL depth charts with Greg DePalma and Ryan Dunleavy on Amazon. I want to show everybody this. This is the Ourlads draft guide. This is last year's draft guide. It's going to be 2021 real soon. This is going to be available in a few weeks. So don't forget to go to ourlads.com and order the Ourlads draft guide. And I have to continually update my 11-team profiles because every time there's a signing, I got to go right back in there and I got to go, all right, well, scratch that paragraph. It's a very hard thing. But anyway, it's a lot of fun.
Look at the Giants. I thought everything we've heard since January was receiver at 11. They signed Kenny Golladay and John Ross, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, they don't really need a receiver. Maybe they go corner. They sign a Dory Jackson, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, they don't need a corner. They're going to go edge rusher. So that's why mock drafts, and I do them. I'm guilty of it. But everything kind of between January and March is like, written in pencil, and now you can really dig into the draft here these next 4 weeks.
And it still ain't over. So that's why we're waiting until April to have our pre-draft show, because hopefully by then we'll have a good indication of what really is going to be as set as possibly can be. And look, there are going to be some trades that are going to happen by the time we do our show and the draft. It always happens. But we'll have our shows in April, so that gives us a couple of weeks to prepare. That's when we'll be back on air again. Ryan, appreciate it as always. Get ready for those 2 pre-draft shows, and then we'll have a lot of coverage of the draft as well. We haven't figured out our schedule yet, but I'm looking forward to dissecting a lot that's going to take place in this year's draft. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like the draft more than free agency, so I'm looking forward to these next 4 weeks.
And it's going to be back in person in Cleveland. I forget exactly where, but somewhere where there's a lake, but I'm not from Cleveland.
And somewhere you can boo Roger Goodell.
Yes, if you still want to boo him, you can. That's just a tradition, whether you want to or not. All right, Ryan, we'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.